with you. Just to expand on Kyle's testimony earlier, I think she missed out a few points. But I really can see how restoration is working through our family. So when I was born, my mum had a breast issue, a lump on her breast. Kyle also struggled with a lump on her breast and needed surgery on that to check out what it was. And obviously Kyle mentioned the hip dysplasia as well, which is on Kyle's side of the family. So I can see that there's issues within both of our families and lineages that we need to kind of restore through our daughter. And there's things that me and Kyle also need to work on. Personality traits, maybe hurt from the past that we're carrying with us, that comes to the front of our relationship and our lives now that we're parents. So it's really interesting how we have this opportunity to try and change things from the past that maybe have repeated themselves, or people in the past that have struggled with certain issues. I can really see how me and Kyle need to resolve things between ourselves and with God. But today's title is Seeking Knowledge. So I want to present with you 3 Bible stories and what that can mean for us in today's society and given the current climate of Family Federation and our church community. I was worried Uncle Ron was actually going to take my sermon when he started speaking. He was going down the path of where I wanted, but I luckily shared something else, so that gives me something to say today. But I want to go back to Genesis chapter 2. And the story of Adam and Eve. So as we know, Adam and Eve were created, they were put in the garden, and it was Adam's job to tend the garden, to look after the garden and to grow it to fruition. So in the Bible it reads, "The Lord took the man and put him in the garden of Eden to work and take care of it. And the Lord commanded to the man, 'You are free to eat from any tree in the garden, but you must not eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. When you eat from it, you will certainly die.'" And as we know through the divine principle, the tree of knowledge of good and evil represents Eve. Why is this? Because she has the potential to create a lineage that is either good or evil. And as we know through the actions that happened, that the lineage that we have is a tainted lineage. I wouldn't go so far to say it's evil, but our lineage is not the lineage that God had hoped for. When I was doing research for this sermon, it's really interesting to look at the origins of the words and what these words mean. The life-changing bit of advice from me last year was from a Christian pastor. I watch his sermons sometimes on YouTube, and he said, don't just take the English translation for granted, because the English language is so limited in explanations or metaphors and meanings. So he said, when you're studying the Bible, always look to the Latin meanings and the Hebrew meanings of words, because often then that makes your study so much more fruitful, so much more deep, so much more beautiful. I think the same can be said for our own under-case studies when looking at Korean translations. Often the English language is quite limited in expressing the heart and often the metaphors of the words. But interestingly, in Latin, apple and evil have the same word, malum, or malon, I guess it would be pronounced. And I was reading this book where for the origins of some of the languages in the Bible. And apparently there was a confusion in the 4th century between scholars who were trying to write down these stories, these Latin stories. So there's a misconception that Adam and Eve ate a physical apple and inherited the sin, and that's how evil came into the world. But it seems like there was a mistranslation, and through their actions there was evil. Also, within the translations, God asked them not to consume from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. If you look at the translation, he did not say do not eat the fruit or do not eat an apple from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, but do not consume from it. So do not engage in something that you're not ready for. Do not skip these growth steps that I have planned for you. And what was the consequence if you were to consume from the tree of knowledge of good and evil? You will certainly die. But again, looking at translations, the word for death in Hebrew is M-U-W-T-H. I'm not going to try and pronounce that. But in the Hebrew scriptures, this word is repeated twice. So if you consume from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, there will be death and death. And scholars believe that this means a deathly death or death beyond death. So the consequence of consuming from the tree of knowledge of good and evil is not just the physical death, it's something so much worse, prolonged death. And this death, as we understand it from the divine principle, is a spiritual death. that through consuming from the tree of knowledge of good and evil, we engage in this deathly death. We're consumed by the spiritual death that we see today. So how did this happen? Let's look at Genesis 3:6. When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it. She also gave some to her husband, who was with her, and ate it. So on Friday, I was out for dinner with a few friends of mine, and how's work going? I explained to them I'm preparing this Sunday service on Sunday. I want to talk a little bit about Adam and Eve. And my one friend, he's not part of our community, and he has no filter. I'm sure you've met people like this. Some say I'm a little bit like that, maybe Pete also, where they just say whatever's on their mind without really thinking, and the word just kind of blurts out. And I said, I'll be talking about Adam and Eve and their relationship, and what's this fruit mean? And he said to me, as a church pastor, you went to social media recently, I saw your photos, and he said, there were some quite beautiful girls on your team who you were working with. He said, honestly speaking, is it difficult to not abuse your power and get their numbers, maybe they look up to you in some way? And I said, I was a bit taken aback by that. And then he followed on and said, perhaps that's what happened in the Garden of Eden. The snake had this power, and perhaps he wanted to exploit it. Has that ever happened to you? I was a bit taken aback by this. I thought, wow, I've got my phone out, I'm going to put that in my sermon. That's exactly what happened. We can see that Lucifer tempted Eve with the idea of gaining knowledge and wisdom. He promised her that her eyes would be open, she could be like God, and that God was holding this back. So he was offering her this wisdom and this understanding. But he knew she was not ready for it. She was still in the growth stage. She was not mature enough to fully understand this. But he tempted her with wisdom, the ability to know more, to have her eyes open, to be like God. And he seduced her in this way, which I think is really interesting in the way that we perhaps try and approach knowledge as well. How do we seek wisdom? How do we find what's right for us? Do we approach it in a mature way when we're ready, or we're a bit like Eve, who wants to rush ahead and to know everything and gain everything straight away? In today's day and age, we can see that this is also reoccurring, that people want things really quickly, people want things fast, people want things instant. Again, I was speaking to the same friend who was talking about his experiences with dating apps. You swipe left or right, and it's just all instant, and then instant match. Okay, let's meet up for a drink. Let's have a relationship. It's all very instant, and you want it now. You can see this with gambling, other forms of addictions, even to the point with our jobs. When I was searching for what I want to do after pastoring, so many courses were popping up. Get rich quickly, become social media influencer quickly, learn these marketing tips with my course, and earn £10,000 a day, learn my trading tips, earn £500 a day on your mobile for a couple of hours. Everything is this instant knowledge now, which is portrayed to us. And I really believe this is similar to how Satan seduced Eve. This idea of, okay, let's get knowledge quick, let's have things quickly. Forget about the maturity, growing, learning, and you just go for the end goal straight away. But there's wisdom in the process, and enjoying the process and learning. The second story I want to present to you is Jesus in the desert at the end of his 40-day fast and 40 nights. So again, we can see here Satan tempted Jesus by asking him to challenge his knowledge of God, asking him to challenge what he understands from God. So the first challenge that Satan presented to Jesus at the time, he said to him, you're hungry, you've been fasting for 40 days in the desert and 40 nights. Why don't you turn these rocks into delicious bread? And he says, if you are the Son of God, command that these stones become loaves of bread. And I absolutely love what Jesus says. He was so strong, he was a man of character, and he responds, it is written, one does not live on bread alone, but on every word that comes forth from the mouth of God. So what he's saying is, I don't eat this physical bread, I live off the word of God, I live off the Spirit of God, so you're not going to tempt me with physical food. So Satan tries again, and he takes him on top of a large balcony, and he says to him, if you are the Son of God, throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and with their hands they will support you, lest you dash your foot against the stone. So here he's saying, jump off this large balcony. Surely if you're the Son of God, the angels will come even before your foot hits the ground. And again, Jesus says, It is written, you shall not put your Lord, your God, to the test. So Satan then tries a third time. He tries something else. He takes Jesus on top of the mountain. He shows him the kingdom in front of him. All the land, all the riches, all the population, all the nature. And he says to him, all these I shall give to you if you prostrate yourself and worship me. And Jesus again, the third time, he says, get away, Satan. It is written, the Lord your God shall you worship, and him alone you shall serve. So 3 times Satan's tried to tempt him, tried to get him to test his knowledge of God, tried to test his understanding of his relationship with God. Jesus understands that that's how Satan works through this. And he was so clear that God is my Father, and only him shall I worship, and only him shall I receive the source of love, inspiration, and wisdom. So a really incredible story. The third story I want to share with you is almost a direct parallel with Eve's experience, and that's the story of King Solomon. So King Solomon became king at a very young age, and scholars believe that when he had this dream with God, he was about 13, 14, 15, early teenage years. So almost a direct parallel with Eve during her growth stage, when she was tempted by Satan, and she was tempted by Satan offering her knowledge. So it says, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God ask for whatever you want me to give you. So if God appeared to you, what would you ask for? Even as adults now, even as Family Federation members who've studied the principle, what would you ask for if God appeared to you in a dream? Money? Power? Happiness? Your family to be happy? How about if God asked 13-year-old you or 14-year-old you? Mikey, what would you ask for if God came to you? I think you're the only one sitting here who's that age.
Probably happiness for my family.
Okay, good. So happiness for my family. I know what I would ask for. Probably money, or I would have tried to be clever and said, God, I want unlimited wishes, or something like that. I would have tried to trick God and see if I could gain as much as possible. But what did King Solomon say? He answered, you have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and gave him a son to sit on this throne to this very day. So again, right from the very start of his interaction with God, he's approaching it with humility. He's approaching this calling, his great father, King David, a servant of God, a servant of the people. And he continues, now, Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. So again, he continues, he says, my father was a servant, even though he was a great king, he's now a king, and he still refers himself to a servant, the lowest of the low, a servant of God. But he continues to recognise his falls, his downfalls, his weaknesses, and he says, I'm king, but I don't know what to do, I don't know how to lead, I don't know how to carry out my duties. I feel a little bit like that too sometimes. And then he continues even further, he doesn't stop there. He says, your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people, and to distinguish between right and wrong. But who is able to govern this great people of yours? So again, he's approaching the situation with such humility. He's saying, you've put me here. The reason why I'm on this throne is because of you, God, because of your grace, because of your gifts. And these are my people, because they're my people, they're also your people. So I have a responsibility, but I don't know what to do. I don't know how to choose between right or wrong. So please give me the knowledge, the wisdom, the intellect, and help me understand your heart so I can lead these people to you. And if you like, this is almost a polar opposite to how Adam and Eve and Satan approached knowledge and wisdom. As we saw on the first few slides, Eve wanted things instantly. She was tempted by gaining knowledge fast and to rush the process of growing and to reach perfection through the false promises of Satan. But here we see King Solomon wanting to take his time, wanting to understand God's heart, and wanting to grow to maturity so he can do right for God, and so he can lead his people and discern from right and wrong. So we can see this is how we should be approaching knowledge. This is the textbook heart, this is the textbook attitude to gaining knowledge and wisdom. It's through connecting with God, being humble, and asking him, what do I need to do, where should I be going, and what is the best way forward for me. So what does that mean for us as a church community? To help us understand the situation in Japan and the wars in Israel at the moment, I think we need to go back to 1984, I believe, or 1985, when Father was imprisoned for tax evasion and fraud in America. When I was reading about this, I know many members were upset that Father was imprisoned and it was an injustice in the American legal system. Even to this day, speaking to members, people still bring up this injustice against Father. But personally, I think this is the wrong way to go about it. So I love this picture here. I was so moved by it. I haven't seen this picture before. Father coming out, raising his hands, and in his autobiography, he claims that he was able to be victorious. He withstood the challenge and he proclaimed victory for heaven when he was released. And I think that shows his father's attitude to gain in knowledge, gain in wisdom. He was put in this situation, but he showed a humble and strong heart, and he showed that he wanted to connect with God and understand why this was happening. He wanted to gain the wisdom of the situation. And I think that, we had to learn from this as a church community as well, rather than playing the victim, rather than calling out this injustice. Perhaps there was something for us to learn through this as well. Perhaps there was God trying to show us wisdom in this situation, trying to guide us to a better future. And our understanding of why things happen, we know that Satan works and God works through the course of history and through restoration, and that Satan can act because of common bases, and God can also act because of common bases. So this must happen for some spiritual reason. That's the point I'm trying to make. We might not fully understand it, but things happen for a reason, especially these large, big events. So fast forward to today's day, or the past few days, where the Japanese government are trying to dissolve the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification in Japan, and they're trying to close down the other affiliated branches, such as UPF, Women's Federation. And this is just my opinion now. This is not official Family Federation opinion. This is not the opinion of IHQ or European headquarters. But I think we're going about this the wrong way. We're playing the victim in a way and saying, look, this is an injustice against us, and please protect us, this is not fair. But I think the approach we should be having is like Father, when he puts his hands up and celebrates and says, look, we have done something wrong. Perhaps there was a mismanagement of finances, perhaps there was a lack of pastoral care surrounding the family, their financial situation. As pastor, if someone's donating their money to the point of going into debt, I think that should have raised a red flag, and perhaps someone who was in that position should have said, you're sacrificing a lot here, are you sure that's sustainable? But many things didn't happen. We're in the situation where we are today. And I really feel that we shouldn't be playing the victim, but rather we should be humble and seek God's wisdom in this time, and ask God to really show us and guide us through this situation, and to ask God, okay, this has happened, why has it happened, what can we learn from it, how can we move forward, how can we rebuild, and how can we really invite you into our hearts. Just like Solomon said, how can I lead my people? These are your people, so how can I lead them in the best way? Please help me figure out right and wrong. I think this is the attitude that we should take. Number one, to be strong and bold enough to say, yes, we've made mistakes, yes, I don't know everything, yes, my understanding is limited. But number two, then, to have the humility to ask you to give me wisdom, to guide me through the situation, so we can build a better future, not just for your people, but for the wider world as well. So this was the basic message that I wanted to share with you this morning. I'd just like to conclude with a prayer. Dios God, Heavenly Parents, thank you so much that we could be gathered here. Please help us seek your wisdom and your truth. But help us also understand your heart and the person behind where this wisdom comes from. Help us connect to you personally, since you are a living God, and you're desperate to see a world of peace and a world of love. There's terrible things going on in Israel and conflicts in the Holy Land, and also within our own community. Perhaps this is a sign that we need to wake up, we need to change, and we need to build a better future. We know that your will's predestined, and that one day you will be successful. help us gain your wisdom and knowledge to build this kingdom of peace, this kingdom of love, centred on families and your word. Again, thanks so much that we can be gathered here, and we want to welcome you to join our communities and to take you with us for the rest of our weeks. I'd like to offer this prayer on behalf of everyone here. In my name, Elliot, Yamamoto.